I think we have all seen that, teachers unions are really strong, and it's also DSA's biggest industry. So there's a lot of overlap between socialists and teachers, and hopefully more soon. Basically, when teachers go on strike, it's as if every single parent at their job is also going on strike because they can't go to work.
Your exchanges with students can help shape a generation of critical thinkers and political actors. You will be a key source for how many young Americans come to perceive the world around them. You may even have the opportunity to teach about social justice and liberation history. And crucially, for organizers, your political work doesn't end at the classroom door.
We as socialists need to build a militant minority of class-conscious teachers that can move our unions in a more militant and democratic direction.
Okay, that clip you just heard, those were, some of them were elementary school teachers, folks. That was the Democratic Socialists of America Labor Caucus Workers Organizing Workers SALT training from September 22nd of this year. It was captured by my guest, Karlyn Borysenko. You can follow her on X at Dr. Karlyn B. That's Dr. Karlyn B. And you can also, of course, that's from her stream. She streams on Rumble, rumble.com/Karlyn, and on YouTube as well. Yeah, I was following along with your facial expressions there. It is shocking to hear teachers, again, so openly talking about using their position of trust and power over children to shape them into little activists to serve their ends. I mean, despicable stuff, Karlyn.
Yeah, I mean, and this is very regular on their streams. If you go to their trainings, their live streams, stuff like that. And it's almost funny because I like, even though I hear this stuff over and over and over again, I'm continuously shocked out of the things that come out of their mouth. Like, for example, I went undercover at the Socialism 2023 conference a couple years ago, which is actually the real name of a conference. It's called the Socialism Conference. It takes place in Chicago every year. And I actually got the president of the American Library Association on video talking about libraries being sites of Marxist organizing. I've gotten teachers on video talking about getting around Florida's anti-woke laws by Zooming. What they actually do is teachers in Florida Zoom in teachers from other states into Florida classrooms to teach the stuff they're not supposed to teach in Florida so that the teachers can say that they're not teaching it. I've got them on video talking about overthrowing the federal government, 19 Ways from Sunday. They say the craziest things out loud because they really don't think people like us are listening.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Second hour of the War Room is on. Go to thealexjonesstore.com to support everything that we are doing here. And, of course, go to Alex Jones app, Alex Jones APP. Download the official Alex Jones app. We're trying to get it up to #1 on the news list on the Apple Store. We started number 8 this morning. I think we got up to number 5. Not sure where we're sitting now, but download it. It's free, alexjonesapp.com. Stay up to date no matter what happens with us next. Now, I'm very, very happy to welcome my guest, Karlyn Borysenko. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She is a bold and unapologetic voice in the fight against collectivist ideologies, a psychologist turned independent journalist armed with sharp wit and a talent for decoding the left's language and tactics. She dives deep into socialist and communist culture to expose their strategies and contradictions. And of course, you'll recognize her if you were watching the show last week. We played one of her videos that was really incredibly powerful, showing the sort of behind the scenes organization of Antifa. You can follow her on X at Dr. Karlyn B, and that's KarlynB, DrKarlynB on X, decodetheleft.com, karlyn.substack.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I'm really impressed by the work that you do. And I recognize you. You've been around for a while, but I lost track of you, and then I started seeing your stuff again. You're sort of having this resurgence. Explain to people, who you are and what's led you to this point, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I've been around actually kind of since 2020, where people might remember me as the knitting Democrat who left the left. And I, was running around conservative and MAGA circles for a while. And then after the 2020 election, I retreated and I basically started infiltrating the far left and going inside their DEI trainings at first. I was going inside DEI trainings that were at colleges and universities all over the country, streaming those on my YouTube channel. And then at some point, I started kind of backing into following the radical revolutionary far left in America, because because I figured out that this is where all of these crazy ideas are coming from critical race theory to gender ideology to climate change, reproductive justice, abolish the police. They all have an origin point, and that is the radical revolutionary socialists and communists in America. And so I've been going undercover at their events in person. I've infiltrated hundreds of their events online to record them, to try to break down the language for people and to show people directly what's going on with primary source evidence, because I feel very strongly that we need to understand the enemy that we are fighting. They are more organized, they're more strategic, and quite frankly, they're more motivated than I think most people give them credit for. And I think we're in for a world of hurt if we don't start wrapping our head around it.
I think so too. I think people fall for the sort of temptation of downplaying the left. They're all just stupid. They're all just college kids. Like, who cares? But like, you're going to lose to them if that's how you treat them. No, they're very organized. They're highly intelligent. They know what they're doing. They're trying to destroy the country, and they're making, progress in that direction. So you have to treat your enemy seriously. And what you find is bombshell stuff. Again, we've got some videos here that we can go to of yours, but we've played them on the show before. And one thing that's interesting is it seems like they're doing this almost out in the open. I mean, they're not really hiding themselves too much. And have you noticed that, or do you agree? And what do you think is behind that choice that they make, to just do this sort of out in the open?
I 100% agree that they're doing it out in the open, but the thing is, you have to know where to look for it. And that was the hardest part for me to figure out when I first started doing this. It probably took me about, 6 months to a year to really figure out where I needed to look for this information consistently. But the reason they're able to do it out in the open is that there just are not people like us paying attention. I mean, for the longest time, I've been one of the very few people that's been going inside their meetings consistently and recording them. And so they are not used to people like us paying attention. So you can go sign up for their meetings. You can go sign up for their membership list. You can go and you can go to almost all of this stuff virtually online. Some are a little bit more difficult to go to than others, but they do operate completely in the open, and anyone can go in and look.
So what is the biggest threat right now that you see? Because last week, the video that we showed of yours was the salting, and it was about setting up for this big grand strike on May Day 2028. And I think that's an important date for people to know. Should that be the main focus right now? Is it what's going on in Portland with these Antifa cells? To you, what is the number one thing to be focusing on when it comes to the far left right now?
Well, I mean, I think it's hard, Harrison, because there's so many different groups on the far left, and I don't think people understand exactly how deep this bench is. So you do have groups like the Democratic Socialists of America, who are the ones that did that salting training. They're doing a whole mass organized effort to try to get their members into jobs in strategic organizations to lead up to a mass general strike in 2028. They're trying to cripple the economy with that. But the thing that's interesting about that is it's not just the DSA that's doing that. Just yesterday, I saw a video of a former Democrat congresswoman outside of the immigration detention center in Chicago, also talking about how the progressives, the people behind Indivisible, are also going to be organizing for a mass general strike. And they want to do what's called a practice strike within the next 6 months, again, all leading up to this 2028 thing. And then, of course, we always have Antifa and the real far left revolutionaries, and they're going to be a constant problem. And I think the danger with Antifa specifically, which is different than the DSA, Antifa specifically does not have one funding source that can be cut off. Maybe they can have some lawyers that are cut off from them, and that might be a good avenue for the Trump administration to pursue. But Antifa is not funded by any affluent funder. They're funded by mutual aid. And so even if Trump and his team figures out a way to cut off their legal aid, they are still going to be violently organizing pretty much every day that they're allowed to be on the street. So I really do hope that Trump bringing the National Guard into Portland and other places is going to actually lead to arresting Antifa, because they're going to be violent as long as they're allowed to be free.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that. And for people who missed the show last week, can you explain the salting method and what they intend to do with putting people in these positions?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea behind salting is that you are getting your socialist members jobs in organizations, whether that be Amazon or Starbucks or grocery stores or the auto workers or the airlines, or even in education. Education is a very strategic industry. And the whole point of getting them jobs is that they are going to be agitating to create new unions, or if unions already exist, getting more people in those unions. And so the unions are basically a focal point of leftist organizing. Almost every single leftist organizing organizing call I'm on, there is a union representative of some sort. I just infiltrated one last night, actually, where they were talking about the No King's Day protest that was coming up on the 18th, and they actually had a member of the Chicago Teachers Union on the call talking about how they are organizing to create sanctuary schools within the Chicago school districts to protect everyone from being deported from ICE. So the unions are a very big problem, and what they're going to try to do is target key industries to have everyone go on strike at the same time in an attempt to cripple the economy and to basically be the spark of the worker revolution in America.
Yeah, and so I guess that's the question. Is their planning contained just to the strike? Because the idea is you've got all these unions and you can all, coordinate it to where all of your, contracts expire on the same day. So they're getting all these different unions, all the contracts expiring on by May 1st, right? May Day, 2028. And then they're going to try to shut down the entire economy and basically say, give us free health care, give us these socialist programs, or we won't open up the economy. I mean, it's so brazen. It's so insane that they would threaten to hold the entire country hostage like this. And they're doing it out in the open. We showed your video where you're looking at and I looked at the website. It's the UAW leader saying, here's what we're doing. We're going to hold the country hostage so they give us what we want. Well, I don't want that. And you don't have a right to hold me hostage until you get what you want. It is so flagrantly undemocratic. It's amazing that they are trying to. I forgot even what I was asking. I just got mad. But so what are they? What are they trying to do here? How successful do you think this will be? I mean, just tell us more about what you know about this May Day in 3 years.
I mean, I think we need to just be impressed by the fact that we are 3 years away from this, and they're already planning for this to be a reality. So they're setting the foundation. They're doing the groundwork now. And based on what I've seen them do, I mean, the Democratic Socialists of America in particular, people should be terrified because they are actually creating a nationwide electoral machine. People don't realize this. They hear about Zoran Mandami, and obviously Zoran Mandami is going to be the next mayor of New York City. But the reason Zoran Mandami is going to be the next mayor of New York City is the DSA in New York City has been organizing for 10 years to create an absolute electoral machine in New York City. They have over 30,000 individual volunteers working for him, basically door knocking and making phone calls. They've made millions of phone calls. They're doing targeted outreach to new voters in mosques and things like that. And if you look at, and I go into their organizing calls both in New York and nationally all the time, they're trying to take that strategy that's working in New York and applying it nationally to getting DSA members elected in local city council races. And they actually just did basically a $100,000 phone banking effort where they're calling it Socialist Cash Beats Capitalist Trash, where they've been calling DSA members all over the country to raise money for people running at local levels for the city council in places like Rochester and Atlanta and New Jersey and, Seattle. And they own the city council in Portland. And this is part of why nothing gets done in Portland. But I really don't think people realize that the DSA is creating quite an electoral machine, and they are highly organized and motivated, and they are growing.
Well, absolutely. And of course, DSA was behind AOC. I mean, we should have been, aware of this a long time ago when AOC came out of nowhere and, unseated the incumbent. People went, well, who is this lady? She was a waitress? Yeah, no, she literally tried out. Like, there was an audition and they auditioned people and said, she's the one, and chose her. So, I mean, that's how powerful the machine is. You can just plug anybody in basically and they can, win an election. I mean, obviously she's talented in certain ways, but that's what they are able to accomplish. And so that does actually tie into the question I was asking earlier that I now remember. Is this just a strike, or is this something bigger? Because it seems to me like you've got the strike being planned and you've got the DSA seating their people in city councils all over the country. Then we played another video last week and had on Mike Shelby of the Gray Zone talking about how they're deciding on a color for their color revolution. So is this just a strike, or are they intending the strike to be the jump off of a widespread, genuine, like Bolshevik style revolution?
I mean, they are quite literally trying to spark the Bolshevik revolution right now. And you guys got to understand, it's not just one tactic. One of the things that's so terrifying to me about the left is I go into their calls almost every single day, and I hear different strategies and different tactics almost every day. So, for example, one of the things that they're doing is since January, basically, Antifa and the far left have been organizing to try to inhibit Trump's deportation. And part of the reason, quite frankly, that we haven't had the mass deportations that I think many of us want is because the far left has made made it incredibly difficult in places like Chicago and Portland and Los Angeles for Trump to actually be able to execute his strategy. This is something that they've been doing since January that just hasn't been reported on at all. So that is a big part of what they're doing, organizing the unions, getting them out to protest, getting people out consistently to come to events. That's part of the ecosystem of the far left. Is the reason they have so many protests and rallies is not necessarily that they think that one protest or rally is going to change anything, but they want people in the habit of going out and protesting and attending events and getting them into the social ecosystem so that they can continue to radicalize them. And they know if they can get you out to like 3 or more events, that you're probably going to show up consistently for them after the fact. And we can see just based on the coverage all year that the protests have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Even the No King's Day protest coming up on October 18th, which is more of a progressive thing. It's not really the far left, but they're expecting it to be double or even triple the size of the No Kings protest earlier this year, which was already the largest nationwide protest in history. And that's because they're constantly out there getting people involved, making sure they're giving them different things to do, and they're active in a number of ways, from boycotting Tesla facilities to boycotting airlines that are deporting people to being active in the schools and putting together plans to create sanctuary schools. They're specifically ignoring Trump's executive orders around teaching gender and all that stuff in school. Those are just being ignored and completely obfuscated. So the far left is actively doing a lot of different things to try to undercut what's going on.
You know, since you brought up the teachers, let me ask you this. What is the connection between UAW, the United Auto Workers union, and teachers? Because I've heard that for some reason the auto workers and the teachers union is like intertwined somehow. What is that about?
So the UAW has a specific kind of like segment or caucus within it that is explicitly for graduate students and faculty members in higher education. So people may not understand this. There are a lot of different unions in higher education, but the UAW specifically targets like the graduate students. And we saw this very prominently with the pro-Palestine encampments, especially around New York City and stuff like that, where anytime they were having one of those big pro-Palestine protests in New York City, a graduate student from Columbia would get up and say, and I'm in UAW number X, Y, B, and Z, or what have you. Of course, the teachers' unions are also heavily unionized themselves, both through the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers, both of which have been involved heavily in things like the May Day protests and have been organizing just pretty continuously all year long.
It's so what a tangled web we weave, I guess you could say. Yeah, it's so tangled and intertwined and contradictory. It's very confusing, but obviously they're just pushing forward with everything they've got. Now, I showed your video, and then you did a live stream where you watched our coverage, and there was one thing I wanted to ask you about, because as we're watching it, I'm comparing the beginning of the strike to sort of like what happened in Germany in 1918, and I'm showing this video where they're picking the color for the color revolution, and I brought up George Soros as being, you know, the Open Societies being one of the main movers behind color revolutions in places like Ukraine and elsewhere, and that got a big laugh out of you, and it seemed like your audience was like, oh no, Soros again. What did I get wrong? What did I get wrong about associating George Soros with this movement?
I mean, you're not wrong in that Soros does fund parts of it, but he tends to fund more progressive causes and like more Democrat politicians. So things like Indivisible, which is really the force behind the No Kings protest, that's a progressive organization, absolutely connected to George Soros. But the reason that we laugh is that we get people in my chat and comments online all the time saying George Soros is funding Antifa. Ted Cruz just tweeted like the other day that George Soros is funding Antifa. Trump seems to think he can cut off Soros money to Antifa, and I'm very sorry to break everyone's heart, but George Soros absolutely does not fund Antifa. Antifa is funded with mutual aid, which are small donations that are made in cash or like products, like maybe gas masks, or they do other things too. But that is how Antifa is funded. They're almost entirely self-funded. And again, I've been undercover with them in their private spaces. I have many former Antifa members in my community that actually watch this content and do this research with me, and they will tell you exactly the same thing. So, and that's one of the tricky pieces with this whole web of the far left, in that there is a huge funding network, but it's not coming from the places that people think it is. It is coming from voluntary donations, dues that the organizations charge, and things like that are mostly handled in cash and are, quite frankly, very hard to trace and very hard to cut off.
Yeah, and you know, maybe some of the lawyers might be getting big checks, but for the average Antifa member, like I've talked to people in Antifa, and they're like, I'm not getting paid for anything. I mean, because, you know, yes, some of it's paid, you know, you got to pay the lawyers and stuff, but I mean, they're dedicated, they're true believers, and they really want to go out there and they think they're fighting the power. On that note, I mean, is there a way to confront this on the informational level? Because it seems like we just need boots on the ground to just put a stop to them. But when you see how widespread it is, when you see the videos that we're showing of all these different people marching, and a lot of them look like nice, pleasant, intelligent people, how do they fall for this stuff? And what do they think they're fighting against? Like, help us get behind the psychology of the people involved in this.
You know, I equate the far left to a cult where it is very much an environment where they are creating a social ecosystem where the people involved in this ecosystem only ever talk to each other. They only read books that are assigned to kind of the group as part of a book club. And they genuinely do believe that they're trying to create a better world. They are trying to overthrow. We need to be very clear about this. They are trying to overthrow the federal government. They believe the federal government and the Constitution are grounded in capitalism, and they cannot abolish capitalism until they abolish the government and the Constitution, but they genuinely do believe they're trying to create a better world. Now, that's crazy and wrong, and it's probably going to lead to us starving, but there is something altruistic about their motives. So, and I want people to understand this because they believe they're fighting the good fight. They believe that they are the freedom fighters of their generation, and many of them believe that we will see a socialist world in our lifetime. They believe that we're in late stage capitalism and that they are very close to their revolution. And that's why they're doing all these direct actions that we're seeing in cities, whether it be protests or vandalism or the things going on outside the ICE facilities, because they are trying to light the spark of the revolution to get the proletariat to rise up so that they can, start the process of transitioning the leadership in the country. But they do all believe that, they believe that they are caring for each other. They believe that if they do not get their Marxist revolution, that all of their friends and family will literally die at the hands of capitalism. And so there's something kind of noble about that, but it's also frightening at the same time because it makes them zealots.
Right. It's sort of the fork in the road. You're either going to become, an info warrior and a right winger, or you're going to become a left winger, but you start off with that same impulse of like, things are wrong, it's unfair, I want to fight for justice. And, just have, if you walk into the wrong bookstore, you get led down the wrong path. And that's a big part of it, right? Bookstores, book fairs, the funding mechanism that you're describing earlier, it has a lot to do with that culture, right? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a fun activity that everyone can do. Just Google Radical Revolutionary Bookstore in your city. It might be called a revolutionary bookstore, a radical bookstore, a collective, something like that, a queer bookstore. And you will find a hub of socialist education. And they have these bookstores all over the country in major cities. They have book fairs where they hand out propaganda. I was just at one in New York a couple of weeks ago where I came back with a stack of propaganda, literally that thick, from different far left organizations. And one of the things that people don't understand is that education really is at the forefront of the organizing of the far left. So in these bookstores, they have event spaces where they're getting their socialist authors out there. They're selling their books. They're having discussions about them. They're learning about all this stuff as a community. And that's part of what bonds the community together. Socialist book publishing is also another source of funding for these people. There are a ton of socialist book publishers, from Haymarket Books, P&M Press, Veriso Books, Pluto Press, AK Press. And these publishers are not only selling to socialist bookstores, they're also selling to colleges and universities. So there is actually a bookstore in downtown Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's called the Harvard Bookstore. It's not affiliated with the university, but if you look in their windows sometimes, they actually have a big Haymarket Books display. Haymarket Books is one of the largest socialist book publishers in the United States. So this is definitely a place where they are actually getting funding from selling their materials.
Yeah, it really is. It's the type of thing where if you don't notice it, you're not going to see, if you don't know it's there, you're not going to see it. But once you start looking for it, it's kind of everywhere. It's kind of terrifying, honestly, seeing how many of these people there are walking around as our friends and neighbor, and they're trying to overthrow the federal government. And they're open about that. And the federal government's not doing anything up till now, and even now, I'm not seeing a ton of action. What do you think about the action that Trump has taken with the federal government since he got into office? You think it's enough? Not enough? Is it working? Is it changing their behavior? What's the effect that that's having?
I sadly think that the Trump administration has not done anything that is going to have any impact on the far left at all. I've read his executive orders around labeling Antifa a terrorist organization. They aren't even defining what Antifa is, so I think those are going to be very hard to implement. I know his executive orders around gender in schools are not being followed because I have teachers on video saying they're not being followed. I think the Trump administration needs to start hinging into reality with how the real far left is organized. And quite frankly, what you just said is, they hide in plain sight. They're literally everywhere. This this is why I spend so much time streaming their content on my channel and teaching people their language and breaking it down. And I've seen this repeatedly with people in my audience. Once you start to understand their language and become fluent in it, you literally start to see it everywhere. And you're absolutely right. Like, they are operating out in the open. There's more of these people than anyone thinks there are. And I think that we need to be returning to the primary sources, because they put all their materials online. They put their strategy sessions, their trainings, all this stuff on the website for us to watch. And there's, quite frankly, more than enough content for everyone to be watching. I mean, one of the things I liked about your segment the other day where you showed my video was that you talked about how anyone can go into these meetings and record, and we need more people to start doing this stuff. And that's absolutely true. I'm one person. I can't record every socialist on the internet. So I would love more people to be doing that, because the more we expose their content, the more we teach people how it shows up in the world.
100%, and it sounds fun. Like, it seems fun. You're like a spy. You're like an independent spy, spying on these people trying to bring the country down. And you can create, a social media platform. You can actually make money with this. I mean, this could be your job. Like it's become yours. So I want to talk to you about how people get involved in that, how they can help you in your efforts, how they get started, where they look, and what to avoid and what can be dangerous about it. So again, my guest is Karlyn Borysenko, and you can follow her on X at DrKarlynB. That's Dr. Karlyn B. DecodeTheLeft.com, Karlyn.substack.com as well. And I encourage you to go and follow her. And again, I remember seeing you pop up. It must have been around 2020. You're on Fox News and stuff. And then I didn't see you for a while, and then I rediscovered you, and I've gone down the rabbit hole, and it's a deep, dark place, but you're a wonderful guide through it. So we'll be back on the other side, more from Karlyn, how you can get involved and what else the DSA is up to. And I want to find out the connections between the scum on the ground and the people in the ivory towers.
I think we have all seen that, teachers unions are really strong, and it's also DSA's biggest industry. So there's a lot of overlap between socialists and teachers, and hopefully more soon. Basically, when teachers go on strike, it's as if every single parent at their job is also going on strike because they can't go to work.
Your exchanges with students can help shape a generation of critical thinkers and political actors. You will be a key source for how many young Americans come to perceive the world around them. You may even have the opportunity to teach about social justice and liberation history. And crucially, for organizers, your political work doesn't end at the classroom door.
We as socialists need to build a militant minority of class-conscious teachers that can move our unions in a more militant and democratic direction.
Okay, that clip you just heard, those were, some of them were elementary school teachers, folks. That was the Democratic Socialists of America Labor Caucus Workers Organizing Workers SALT training from September 22nd of this year. It was captured by my guest, Karlyn Borysenko. You can follow her on X at Dr. Karlyn B. That's Dr. Karlyn B. And you can also, of course, that's from her stream. She streams on Rumble, rumble.com/Karlyn, and on YouTube as well. Yeah, I was following along with your facial expressions there. It is shocking to hear teachers, again, so openly talking about using their position of trust and power over children to shape them into little activists to serve their ends. I mean, despicable stuff, Karlyn.
Yeah, I mean, and this is very regular on their streams. If you go to their trainings, their live streams, stuff like that. And it's almost funny because I like, even though I hear this stuff over and over and over again, I'm continuously shocked out of the things that come out of their mouth. Like, for example, I went undercover at the Socialism 2023 conference a couple years ago, which is actually the real name of a conference. It's called the Socialism Conference. It takes place in Chicago every year. And I actually got the president of the American Library Association on video talking about libraries being sites of Marxist organizing. I've gotten teachers on video talking about getting around Florida's anti-woke laws by Zooming. What they actually do is teachers in Florida Zoom in teachers from other states into Florida classrooms to teach the stuff they're not supposed to teach in Florida so that the teachers can say that they're not teaching it. I've got them on video talking about overthrowing the federal government, 19 Ways from Sunday. They say the craziest things out loud because they really don't think people like us are listening.
And you can listen to them, and you can listen to them, and you can bust them. You can break this news. So how does one do that? How do you go about it? Because we've instructed people how to do this too. Because one thing I noticed that during Trump's second administration, the protests bent a lot older on the spectrum. A lot of geriatrics out there protesting, not a lot of young people. People saw that and said, the left has given up. I said, no, they went underground. They've given up on protesting. They don't think that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden is worth it. So they went underground and are organizing underground. And we've even showed things like Telegram groups where, in the public facing part of the Telegram group, they'll say, I think protesting isn't enough. We need real action. And somebody else will say, that's for the private chat. Join here. And then they have a private room where you actually have to have a Signal account where you can do a video interview, because that's how careful they are in some of these inner circles on vetting people, making sure you're not an infiltrator. So how does one get involved in this? How would our audience, if somebody's sitting out there watching this, learning about this for the first time, how would they get involved in what you do, or starting their own method of doing this?
Yeah, the very first thing I would do is I would say you need to learn the language of the far left, because a lot of people, even if they listen to the far left, they don't really understand what they're saying and they think it sounds like word salad. It's very confusing. They do have their own dialect. I call it socialist. You can call it whatever you want, but it's not plain English. They use the same vocabulary as us, but not the same dictionary. So I actually have training classes on my Substack, which you guys have had up, karlyn.substack.com. If you go to the How to Speak Socialist section at the very top, you will find 3 introductory level training classes where I go into their trainings, I use their clips, I break down the language, I tell you what it means. You can come to my live streams, I'll teach you the language there. It's important that you know what the language means going into it, because if you don't know what the language means, you aren't going to be able to identify the important points. So that's step number 1, is you got to put your learning hat on and you got to learn how to speak a different language. This does take a little bit of time. I cannot teach you how to do this in a 5-minute video. You've got to put a little bit of effort into it. Once you do that, what I would recommend then is start by going into like DSA calls. Join the local DSA in your area. I actually have members in DSAs all over the country that are feeding me information from different like little city council races that they're running, organizing strategies, things like that. The reason I say to start with the DSA is it is actually the least dangerous and like low commitment thing you can do. You pay them $5 a month in dues. You get access to all their meetings. You can go in, record them, ask questions. Once you learn how to speak their language, you can have conversations with them where you're, pretending to be like them, just like a spy, which is a rather fun thing to do. You can also go to bookstores in your area, find out what events are going on, and just to start, if you're going to go to something in person, I recommend going to a book reading or something like that, because part of the challenge, Harrison, that people don't anticipate when they're going undercover at these events is you have to sit there and just listen and not show that you're shocked at what's going on. And it takes a certain amount of like mental preparation to do that going into it. So just start small, go to a book reading for a couple hours and just get used to being that in that environment. The first time I ever went undercover, I went to a socialist reproductive justice conference at Hampshire College in Massachusetts. And it was a moment where I was in a college classroom surrounded by all of these gender studies majors where they all had like shaved heads and unshaved armpits and that sort of thing. And it was a moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm in a socialist training video right now. I almost burst out laughing in the middle of the room because it was so unexpected and hilarious. So you actually do have to prepare for these things.
Well, so and I wonder, is there any temptation for you to, because in that video you're being very quiet. I don't know if your mic is on or if you're in the Zoom call, but like, are you only watching, or is there any temptation to start maybe throwing some wrenches in the works and start bringing up stuff that is going to start some arguments, or are you doing anything like that?
Oh, I do that all the time. I'm being quiet because I'm like, that's my recording of the call, so I want the recording to come out. But no, I ask them questions all the time, but I try to be very strategic about the questions that I'm asking because I want them to think I'm one of them to say the quiet part out loud. And so, yeah, I get them talking about wanting to abolish capitalism. I get them talking about all the ways in which they're going to obfuscate Trump's executive orders and stuff like that. So, but again, you have to learn the language because you have to know exactly how to frame it so that they don't suspect. Because now that my stuff is getting out there a little bit more, they are very aware that I'm recording them. I was actually secretly recording someone at a university in Indiana like about a week ago. And in the call, when they went to the Q&A session, they said, we have to be careful because people are infiltrating these calls now. So just stay on topic with your questions. So they are aware of it. So we have to be extra sneaky.
Well, but even that can be good, right? Even that, just, letting them know, like, all right, you're not safe here. You can't actually, talk freely. That's going to hamper them in a certain way as well. And just, out of curiosity, I asked the crew to print out this simple sabotage field manual by the CIA. And I'm wondering if these have any, advice for this. Because, again, that would be... I hear you. I would have a very hard time sitting there quietly and nodding along to some of this stuff. I would be very tempted to start, well, is that really fair to black people? Do we think that's fair to, and just to mess them up a little bit. Oh, that would be very tempting. Are you aware of this manual by any chance?
I'm not aware of the manual, but I have to take a look at it now.
It's got some very good tactics, and it's all stuff like that. And it's funny because once you start looking at this, you'll see the way that these things are often deployed by socialists in, unions or, corporations. You'll see like, oh, this is what they're doing, but you can do it to them. We don't have to adopt their ideology to adopt some of their tactics. And I encourage that because we can see how effective some of their tactics are. Now, when it comes to the vocabulary, it's interesting. The first video I ever did for Infowars 7 years ago was outside of a Bilderberg meeting, and it was called How to Speak Globalist. And it was the same thing. It was, all right, when they say this, what they mean is this. When they say, whatever, and there are certain words you can find. Stakeholder is one of them. Equity is one of them. Resilience. If you see resilience, that means that there's World Economic fingers not too far away. So that's very interesting. And I wonder, what is the connection between some of the higher level, World Economic Forum types that are pushing the digital ID, that are pushing the one world government, and the scum on the ground, for lack of a better word? I mean, is there a connection there? Is there a shared ideology? What is the connection? Because it seems like we're fighting two different forces. But in reality, I think they're kind of the same. How do you judge that?
I understand why you say that. So actually, the far left hates the WEF and the World Economic Forum stuff. I've heard them talking about this specifically, but it is also true that both the radical revolutionary socialists in the United States and the WEF want globalism. They both have a different vision of globalism. How I explain this to people is it's basically like we've got the Red Sox and the Yankees, right? They both want to win the World Series, but that doesn't mean they're on the same team. It just means they're going to fight at some point. So I think that's what we're dealing with.
That's very interesting, yeah, because like you said, I mean, they aren't directly funding these people, but they are funding the ideas, or they're giving cover for them. And again, for people that want to be involved in this, obviously they can go and actually start infiltrating and recording this stuff. I think that's very valuable, especially, I mean, just getting you don't even have to put your face or anything. You can just get the recording and post it and go, here's what they're talking about. Isn't this crazy? Yep. And that's incredibly valuable. What about in real life? Or, once you get the information, how do you act on it? Do you act on it? If you find out that they're organizing, city council to do something, do you then go and talk to the city council about that? I mean, what is the strategy to put this information into effect to stop their plans?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. I think you can do this locally by letting other people know what's going on, making sure they understand it. The biggest challenge we have right now, Harrison, is I think that there are a lot of people, quite frankly, that just don't take the left seriously and that are very, very apathetic to what they're doing. And that is the biggest challenge that I have in terms of getting this information out there, even to right-leaning audiences, is that they don't think that this is a serious threat. They think that Trump has contained all this information. And so for me, what I try to do is just educate people as much as possible about, here's how you identify the language, here's how it's showing up in the world, here are places it might show up, here's information that you can go out and give to people in your communities, whether they're on the city council, whether they're on the school board, whether they're just parents in your communities that are concerned about what's going on. We need to start educating each other and helping our neighbors and our family and our friends to really start to perceive this as an imminent threat to the country, because I do genuinely believe it is. I think that, the Civil War is not going to be Democrats versus Republicans. It's not going to be red versus blue. It's going to be radical revolutionary socialist versus the federal government. And I think it's going to come sooner than many people think. And I don't think many are prepared for it. And I think they should start listening to what the left is talking about.
I think you're exactly right. And, again, I look back in history. The Bolshevik Revolution is a great example, but I think the German Revolution in 1918, it looks an awful lot like what they're planning. If you know what happened there, it started, up in the north and actually started in the Navy, but essentially you had, socialist agitators, many of whom were actually sent by Soviet Russia, specifically go get a job in a union. They would radicalize that union. And so then when the revolution actually popped off, when the Navy refused orders and they created a little Soviet in this town, I can't start with an F, but right near Hamburg. But sort of the instance that happened, people in Munich went, okay, it's our turn now. We're the Bavarian Socialist People's Party, and it was like they already had all these people in all these important industries and all these important, or city councils, things like that, and they almost had a parallel government structure like ready to go, waiting for the revolution. And once it popped off, they all took their positions, said we're in charge now. So it looks an awful lot like that. I mean, do you think that's the scale we're talking about here in 2028?
100%. That is what we're talking about. And what you'll start noticing, and this has been happening over the past several years, is you're starting to see these revolutionary communist parties get started in the United States. And these are political parties, but they're not really about running for office. You have like the Revolutionary Communists of America. You have the Party for Socialism and Liberation that's been around for a long time, the DSA, obviously. But all of these political parties are kind of like ramping up their recruitment, not because they want to run for office, but because they're trying to give people something to join so that when the revolution happens, they're already ready for it. And I'll tell you, they do a lot of education around the Russian Revolution and the Bolshevik Revolution, and they are directly trying to model that in the United States right now. You know, my husband grew up in Ukraine. He grew up in the USSR, and I was explaining to him this general strike thing that I've been seeing. And the first thing out of his mouth to me was, "Oh, that's the revolution then. That's what they're trying to do here." And I said, "That's exactly right."
Yeah, I think people, like you said, they don't take it seriously. And it's like, maybe we're just a nerd to this at this point, but it's like, there is a communist revolution being planned right now. It's got some of the biggest unions. It's got this incredibly powerful political infrastructure with the DSA. And they're telling you May 1st, 2028, it's on. And like, we would be so stupid to allow them to get to that point. And obviously they're going to talk about the Bolshevik Revolution because that one worked. The 1918 revolution in Germany was shut down, but it was purely from these like independent military generals that just said, I'm going to go in and shut this down. And they just sort of without orders went in and crushed the Communist Party. I don't think we're going to get that lucky this time in America. I don't think we're going to have any, battalions in the fort down the street, walking in and taking over the city hall. Maybe so, but we would be fools not to be prepared for this and to be putting things in place right now to counteract or dismantle their obvious and open plans of 2028. How do we do that, Karlyn?
I mean, again, what I'm trying to do, Harrison, is I'm trying to educate as many people as I can about the language of the far left, because I think, and you mentioned this earlier, as soon as you start understanding the language they're using, you start seeing it show up everywhere. Yeah. Another thing I'm working on right now is I have a nonprofit called the Center for Left-Wing Studies. People can find it at leftwingstudies.com, where I'm actually trying to map out the modern leftist ecosystem. I'm trying to map all their organizations out and actually show it on a physical map so that people can see what we're dealing with. And I got to tell you, this is actually one of the most terrifying projects I'm working on right now, because it is a giant rabbit hole where every time we uncover one organization, we get 50 more that we have to look into, and they're all over the place. And I think that, what I'm trying to do is really put a lot of data and primary source evidence around it so that we can start to get a sense of the enemy we're fighting. Because again, if people aren't hinged into reality, if we're just dealing with these narrative talking points that the politicians are using, that they're running around on Twitter with, we are not going to be prepared. And this map that you're showing on your screen right now, this is just like we're basically starting to build this out. This is a teeny tiny little segment just that we've loaded in for the moment. But this map, I promise you, in a couple of months is going to be completely filled with red pins all over it. And because that is how severe the problem is.
Yeah, I noticed you don't have any red pins in Texas, and I can tell you,
not yet.
There should be about 200 pins in Austin alone from the number of groups that I know. So, well, that seems like a very fun project. Can people contribute to that project if they go there? And give us that website again.
Yeah, absolutely. This is leftwingstudies.com. If they go to the give section, it is a nonprofit, so it is a tax-deductible donation. And also, if you want to volunteer to help me, click the volunteer button and follow the instructions, and I will bring you onto the volunteer team, and we'll teach you how to do that.
I think it's so incredible what you're doing, and it's such a, you're the type of person that I see what you're doing, and I'm like, how are there not 100 people doing this? How is she not going on Fox News every day or national platforms to talk about this? Clearly, because you're not even remotely speculating. You're not coming up with anything yourself. I mean, not to downplay what you're doing, but what you're doing is just showing the reality. You're just showing what they're doing and they're talking about. How is more attention not paid to this? Do you think the right wing in office right now has any idea what they're up against, and how do we get that message to them?
No, they have no idea what they're up against, Harrison. And I got to tell you, I've been asking myself the same question for a couple of years now. About a year ago, I woke up and I realized I was the only person doing this. And I basically had a massive panic attack because I was like, oh my God, there's more than I can ever actually do by myself. But no, I mean, it is mind-boggling to me how little attention is paid to what is going on the ground. And what I constantly see that is covered on conservative media are just things that are advancing a narrative that is politically convenient at any given time, while ignoring information that is quite frankly hyper relevant, that it's just not even getting any airtime. And again, I will use the ICE protests as part of this. Antifa and the far left has been organizing to protest and basically inhibit Trump's deportation plan literally since the minute he got elected to office. I started covering this on my Substack in January. They've been doing this the entire time, but it just wasn't covered on conservative media up until recently. And that is how the situation escalated and snowballed, where the problem is much bigger now than it was back in January, but no one was paying attention to it. And so I beg and plead people, please start hinging into reality. And listen, I'm not everyone's cup of tea as a teacher of socialism on the internet. I can be a bit much sometimes. I acknowledge that, but please just look at the evidence and look at the primary sources and just go right to the root of the cause, because it's all out there in public for everyone to see. And I think a lot of that is being ignored in favor of clickbait that is advancing a political narrative.
You know, I wonder if I'm just thinking about everything that you're describing, the salting, because the salting is two form, right? One is getting people into the union who will radicalize the union. The other part is getting people into positions in organizations that don't have a union, Amazon, Starbucks, Walmart, those types of places. Those are not unionized, but they're hiring people in order to get the union going. And I'm sitting here like, I wonder if Amazon could help us out. Like, they don't want a union. I wonder if we could show this to Jeff Bezos, go, hey, these people are trying to bring your company down. I mean, and you know, I hate to fulfill the stereotype of being a corporate stooge, but it's like, do they not care that this is happening? They're going after your companies. Maybe you want to have some interest in this. Maybe they can use some of those political donations they are so generous with to actually move the ball, you know, in our direction and away from the far leftists. I'm just sort of spitballing and thinking out loud here, but what are the corporations doing to fight this infiltration that's happening?
They're doing absolutely nothing. And if Jeff Bezos wants to see more video of that salting training, there were Amazon employees on that salting training, like current Amazon employees talking about what they were doing at Amazon. So if Jeff wants to see that clip, I'm more than happy to provide it. But yeah, I mean, I think like I would love to get the attention of Elon Musk on this one. And I appreciate a lot of the things that Elon Musk has done, but I think he still has a little ways to go in understanding the true motives and nature of the far left. And I think that if we were able to show him some of the footage we have of leftists talking about trying to overthrow the country, abolishing the Constitution. By the way, another thing that people don't talk about is when they're talking about abolishing capitalism, one of the aspects of capitalism they want to abolish are parental rights over your kids. So all the attacks on parental rights are coming from this ideology. I have socialists on video talking about how children are private property of their parents, that they want to abolish that. I have them on video saying F parental rights. And this is if this doesn't motivate you, I don't know what does. In the socialist utopia, there will be no parental rights. The children will belong to the community and they will get whatever trans affirming surgery that the community wants them to have and all these things. And that is the world they're building towards.
Yeah, it's weird how all of this is intertwined. You'd think that, you know, you wouldn't have to be down with the sexual stuff to just want to take down but no, there's something about it. It's all the same movement, and you almost have to believe all of it to believe any of it. And I think Elon Musk would be a great person. But again, I think it'd be fun to go into these, find the Amazon person, find their manager, and start sending emails going, you know, this person is trying to unionize right here. You might want to fire him. I mean, we could disrupt this so well if we had enough people just sharing this information, just getting this, getting the videos to the people that it actually concerns. People are not going out and looking for this, and it's a damn shame in this country that people, you know, have to be told things. But like, that's our job. We gotta shove this in people's faces and go, look, watch. They are telling you what they're doing. Are you okay with this? If not, let's move against them. You just do incredible work, and I've so enjoyed this hour. I've learned a lot. You can follow Karlyn Borysenko at Dr. Karlyn B on X. Decode the Left, karlyn.substack.com. That's KARLYN.substack.com. Leftwingstudies.com. You got a lot of stuff going on. You're a very busy woman. But I always have, every time I have a good guest on like you, I get people on X going, who was that woman? So I'm going to say it again, all right? KARLYN.substack.com. Is that a good sort of home base for you, and they can find other stuff from there?
Yeah, that is a perfect home base for me. And listen, we do need more people doing this. And if you want to learn the language of the left, I personally don't care what other political disagreements we have. We have one big enemy in this country, and we need to start setting all the other stuff aside and focusing on the thing that matters, because they are literally trying to burn it all down. So if you want to learn about the left, come follow my streams. I stream Monday through Friday on YouTube at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I do a Socialism Saturday stream on Saturdays at 6 p.m. where we watch the real radical revolutionary far left. I publish on the Substack. I have the nonprofit going. I'm doing the best I can. And as many people show up to help me, we will be able to map out the modern left, create lists of activists that we can go to organizations with, and do to them, quite frankly, exactly what they are doing to us. I don't think there is anything wrong with taking the left strategy and applying it against the left. I think that's exactly what we need to be doing. And people might get, clutch their pearls a little bit over, are we a leftist if we're using their strategy? Well, no, because our ideas are better. And right now they're winning because they're out there implementing this strategy that is very effective, that is working. And so if we implement this strategy with our ideas, we can defeat them. But we've got to get serious about it. We've got to start learning their language. And I will teach anyone that wants to come and learn.
Incredibly powerful stuff. And that actually reminds me of the thing Elon Musk said yesterday, where he said, the idea being better doesn't really matter. It's who puts the work in. They have terrible ideas, but they're out there organizing, they're fundraising, they're going to, the book fairs on the weekend and meeting people and sharing their number. If you're just sitting in your room, clicking around on X, you're going to lose. Doesn't matter if your ideas are better. So I think that's so important. What an incredibly powerful message. Karlyn Borysenko, thank you so much for being with us on X at Dr. Karlyn B. You're going to have to come back again very soon. I want regular updates from you onto what the left is up to. So thank you so much for being with us, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.
Absolutely, Harrison. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to next time.
Wow, absolutely incredible stuff. I'm blown away. And again, it's a full-on communist revolution. You cannot overstate this. You cannot blow this, up more than it is.
Thank you.
It's dangerous how little we're paying attention to this right now. So absolutely incredible stuff. We'll be back on the other side. I'm going to open up the phone lines for your calls. Remember to go to thealexjonesstore.com, thealexjonesstore.com. 20% off everything right now. It's a massive sale, 2 for 1 on all the supplements, because this is our last stand. We're still here, folks, but it's up to you how much longer we will be.